Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with the membership here today and support the PMA. We've been a member for several years and have worked with many of the staff at the PMA as well as PMA members in various capacities. But today we're going to talk a little bit about our strategic assessment program that we started with the PMA about 5 years ago. Before I talk about it, I just want to share a little bit of information that kind of sets the stage for why I believe this assessment and sort of baselining your organization in order to make improvement is a critical first step. If you go to the first slide, I mean, we are obviously in an incredibly unprecedented time for manufacturing. Oh, that doesn't look very pretty. But we're looking at a situation where at the beginning of 2020 we were sort of anticipating a minor recession to hit the market. We certainly were not anticipating the COVID impact. And of course, you know, fast forward to the end of March and you see this massive impact of COVID. You can see that every single industry across our market has been affected. What you're looking at is from our recent study in the end of August, where we asked people what industries you're in, and we asked what % of your forecasts for 2020 do you plan to achieve. So certainly many markets in a very different situation, consumer goods and medical a little stronger because of our staying at home and purchasing consumer goods, and certainly medical as a result of COVID, but others much more difficult of a challenge, although automotive was down quite a bit, is starting to come back quickly, and we'll see if that holds true for 2021 as well. But if you go to the next slide, you can also see that it's hit process types very significantly. So here you're looking across many types of suppliers or manufacturers, from die builders to molders to stampers. And if you just click one more time, Nicole, you'll see that on the production side of the business, this is probably where we have the greatest concern. This, again, was over 350 companies that provided data to us just this past August. And they're looking at basically their forecasted 2020 utilization. You can see that stampers are really looking at probably the lowest utilization they've seen in quite some time. Pre-COVID, they were probably about 2/3 of their actual utilization, and now many of them still running at about 50% overall utilization for the calendar year 2020. Those of you in manufacturing, you know that's very difficult to be able to sustain profitability during this time. So if you look at the next slide here, you can see that stampers actually are expecting the slowest return. When we ask people what your expected % of planned 2020 revenue was, you can see that stampers and metal formers are at 75% of their actual planned forecast for the calendar year. So below the average, and some of the best performers in the industry are still anticipating being close to 100%, and some other process types much higher as well. So we're seeing the stamping industry having really taken a significant hit as a result of COVID. And on this last data slide, this next one here, this is probably the most concerning for us, and that is the profitability numbers. We're seeing that the stampers are looking at actually the lowest level of forecasted 2020 EBIT, earnings before interest and tax, of all of the other process types. So we compared 2017 calendar year, 2018, 2019, and then asked them to forecast where they thought they would be for 2020. And we have a significant amount of stampers that participate in our studies on a regular quarterly basis, and you can see they're looking at 2% EBIT. Keep in mind that's an average, so that means some are well below that and some are much, much higher than that. So this is probably the most troubling piece of data for us as we look at the marketplace, and we look at what's happening specifically within some of the PMA members. If you go to the next slide here, the grim forecast that for me as a forecaster I have to share on at times is that we are not going to see all shops make it through this COVID crisis. We know that there was a lot of stimulus put into the market, and likely will be another one sometime before the end of the year, depending on the election. But at the end of the day, there are shops who are already in a significantly difficult situation. banks are not doing well and they're putting companies into forbearance. We're actually working today within 8 or 9 different restructurings of companies that just came about as a result of COVID. So many of the production shops, almost 40% of production and 45% of tool shops, said they're very concerned and are struggling significantly. They're having problems getting labor. They have high absenteeism. They can't even meet production deliveries, even if they do have the demand. They have low cash on hand, and they're not calculating 13-week cash flows and understanding the pace of their business. So we believe we're going to see 20 to 30% of all manufacturing, so not just stamping, but all manufacturing sort of fall out over the next 18 months as this industry continues to go through a difficult time as a result of the impact on COVID and now the global recession that we're in and will likely be in for quite some time. So the positive side about this is it's actually not too late to act. There are a lot of things that companies can do in order to set the baseline of their business and begin to make improvement. And that's what begins to lead us to the assessment. You have to understand the current state of your business. Many companies have been running around sort of firefighting day in and day out since COVID hit. And what we have to do now is step back, understand the current state of our business, look at the market intelligence and the data that we need in order to inform our decision making. And we need to create a plan for 2021 and beyond. And we've got to start thinking about the future and what that means. We have to question everything in our business, and we have to look for unique ways to operate. It's great that we had some stimulus, but that will go away. And so we have to start to look forward. So this strategic assessment program is something that we developed with the PMA several years ago. It is what we call a health check for your business. Nicole, you can bring the rest of those in as well. The goal of this is to identify gaps and opportunities for improvement. It's basically to baseline your business and to benchmark you against best in class, and then be able to provide tools to overall enhance your performance as a business. So this strategic assessment program is something that we've done with manufacturers for years, and we started with the PMA. We do about 40 of these a year, and the goal is to help you develop a roadmap for improvement. So now that we know we've taken a hit, where do we stand today, and what are the things we can put in place to move forward? So on the next slide, you'll see these are the 9 categories of the business that we assess when we're on site. We're looking deep into management and management plans and strategies and metrics, going to sales and marketing and how we cost and quote, the human resource side of things and how we're managing and retaining people, finance, the strength of our finance operations, and then of course the operations itself, scheduling and everything that goes into operations and continuous improvement and making pieces and parts. Engineering, materials, quality, and program management. So we send in 3 people into your organization for 2 days. We utilize a standard criteria and we rate the companies in each of these 9 categories, and then we do benchmarking and comparisons and share where you stack up to your competitors, and then ultimately provide recommendations for improvement. On the next slide, you'll see a few examples of kind of what our goal is in terms of the deliverables. The colorful chart on the left is kind of the scorecard that for each of those 9 sections, and you can see there are several subsections below that we're looking at. We're really assessing every portion of your business from front to back and really trying to identify where the gaps are. The ultimate goal is to drive to agility or matching supply to demand, particularly in an environment today where demand is so unknown and fragile at this point. And so we're looking for balance across the organizations and how companies improve their overall business in each area. And the next page is just also some additional sample outputs of kind of how we dig in and provide recommendations to people on what can be done differently, utilizing pictures, utilizing best practices, not sharing anything that's confidential. We sign a confidentiality agreement with every company, and we're only taking pictures and sharing what happens in your specific facility. But ultimately, it's about trying to help push the organization to be better in their business. On the next slide, You can see that the strategic assessment is a cost through the PMA of $7,500 for 3 people on site for 2 days. And you can schedule these assessments very easily through the PMA. It's a discounted price as part of your membership with the PMA. We have several people who have gone through it, key members of the board and other members of PMA who would be happy to talk to you about the process and what's involved and what their experience was like. If you'd like to get some references, I'm happy to provide those as well. So that's it for my piece as well, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end.